Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I am Joanne Godfrey, the Product Marketing Group Manager for FinOps Solutions at Spot by NetApp, and I'm here with Ricky Ibarra, the Manager for Cloud FinOps at Telium, and Capen Brinkley, the SRE Manager and Architect at Telium. Telium is a longtime customer and user of Spot by NetApp's FinOps solutions, and today we're going to talk a little bit about how Telium operationalizes FinOps and puts it into practice at their organization using some of our products and their bright minds. As we move through this webinar, please feel free to submit any questions you may have through the Q&A option on your screens. We will answer as many questions as we can during the webinar, and for those that we don't have time to answer, we'll get back to you afterwards. So let's get started, but before we get into the Telium portion of this webinar, I hope you don't mind if I take a couple of minutes to give you a very brief overview of Spot by NetApp's approach to FinOps. Given the scale and complexity of the average organization's cloud environment, not to mention the interdependence between cloud cost and infrastructure, we believe that now is the time to evolve the way organizations approach FinOps by embedding FinOps processes within cloud operations to drive greater cost savings together with resource and process efficiencies to be able to make better decisions and support business in the long term. And Telium will shortly tell you about their journey doing just that. But before that, very briefly, how do the Spot by NetApp solutions operationalize FinOps? So first, Spot continuously optimizes your cloud commitment purchasing, reserved instances, savings plans, and other financial commitments to achieve maximum savings with the greatest flexibility. Spot can also auto-scale your cloud infrastructure, VMs, containers, and Kubernetes, utilizing Spot's AI and machine learning-driven automation, which performs real-time analysis of workload requirements and automatically optimizes for capacity, utilization, availability, and performance, while using the most cost-efficient purchasing options and compute types, including on-demand, reserved, and Spot instances. And Spot also provides timely and actionable visibility across AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud into cloud spend, resource utilization, and waste through dashboards, reports, billing, and best practice checks to continuously identify cost optimization opportunities. And with Spot, you can easily allocate cloud consumption any way you want. But what are some of the benefits of using Spot by NetApp for FinOps? You will benefit from some early quick wins by generating immediate cost savings by automatically removing waste and inefficiencies and using the most cost-efficient strategies for purchasing cloud resources. This will help you build momentum and lay the groundwork to increase those savings over time, regardless of where you are on your FinOps journey. You will operate as a continuously cloud-efficient organization by using the most cost and performance-efficient infrastructure. It's one less thing for the DevOps and SREs to have to think about. You will get visibility that is truly intelligent and actionable to make informed decisions on how to optimize your applications as well as your business. You will be able to embed FinOps governance practices and drive collaboration and financial accountability across your organization. And all this significantly reduces the risk, the burden, the complexity, and the manual work needed to support your FinOps strategy. It also helps you achieve your sustainability goals. So as the industry leader for FinOps, Spot by NetApp has extensive experience managing thousands of customers over many years, from innovative startups to global enterprises, delivering billions of dollars in realized savings to these customers. These are not potential savings, these are actual savings for live running workloads. And now I'll turn over to Ricky and Capen to tell you about Telium's FinOps journey and the lessons they learned along the way. Ricky, Capen, thank you so much for joining us here today. Before you get started on your FinOps journey, can you tell us a little bit about yourselves? And Ricky, maybe you go first.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ricky Ibarra, and I'm the manager of Cloud FinOps here at Telium. I joined the firm almost 4 years ago to launch our FinOps journey and to manage our cloud and our software spend.
And hello, everyone. My name is Capen Brinkley, SRE manager and architect at Telium. I've been here for about 8 years, and I've seen a lot of change and transition over that time. And I'm excited to share with you the past 3 years of our FinOps journey and how Spot was an integral part of that.
So thank you. And can you now tell us a little bit about your business? Who is Telium?
Sure, Joanne. Who is Telium? What do we do? Telium specializes in transforming our clients' customer data platform from fragmented, disparate systems with siloed daily stores that require arduous efforts to connect with their customers to a cohesive, well-organized workflow that allows businesses to connect with their customers like never before. Now, how do we do that? We do that by creating a vendor-agnostic platform that allows our clients to collect data via multiple sources and unique workflows to transform and enrich that data so it can be activated to service their clients in a compliant fashion that honors the necessary privacy and consent regulations that exist in the market today. So we handle a large amount of data day in and day out for our customers. Well, without going too deep into the details, to give you a relative idea of the volume we handle, Telium processes as many inbound and outbound events and actions as Google does searches in a day. So with that in mind, it's fair to say the infrastructure we put in place to manage these interactions is quite sizable and costly on a daily basis. We at Telium were also very cost conscious about how we manage that infrastructure. So in operations, we're viewed as cost center. So we work very hard to optimize that cost for the business and our clients respectively. And this is a basis for how our journey began.
Well, it sounds like you have a very large and complex and really dynamic environment with very demanding performance requirements for customer-facing applications. How do you start your FinOps journey in a world like that?
Yeah, so I'm going to lay this out in this timeline you see here, and it's going to detail the different phases of maturity, which we'll call our crawl, walk, and run phases. So starting on the left, like many others prior to June 2020 here, we had already rolled out auto scaling across many of our data processing tiers with rudimentary forms of scaling. So that would be like static or manual scaling. We had some forms of time-based scaling and some basic performance indicators such as aggregate CPU. Now, in order to continue optimizing our costs, we found spot elastic groups, which helped us reach the next milestone of big savings by leveraging multiple instance types and the spot market together. So instead of doing on demand or trying to forecast our eyes, that's kind of how we were able to save costs in there. So lots of cost benefits were realized with this phase alone. But so during this time, we already had Docker workloads running across these elastic group tiers, but only as single Docker processes that ran that component tier with perhaps a few sidecars for monitoring or for some enhanced telemetry on when we started getting into more advanced forms of scaling. So the result of that was we were wasting resources and money by not running any form of container orchestration or benefiting from bin packing there. So container orchestration came about for us starting in June of 2021. Our architectural committee, we'd landed on AWS's Elastic Kubernetes service for container orchestration. To enhance that, we decided to leverage Spot Ocean to allow us to continue optimizing cost savings even further by leveraging yet again, multiple instance types, including different classes and sizes across the spot market. So the next two steps of our timeline for the beginning, the EKS migrations and the right sizing included many hiccups and learnings along the way to optimizing our container orchestration and getting additional efficiency and cost savings. Some of those learnings were running a workload standalone versus an orchestrated pod in Kubernetes was never a straight one-to-one conversion. The resources required to run one scenario versus the other was almost never the same. So also our configuration systems differed between the two platforms, and we had to run migrations through a fine-tooth comb to avoid missing anything and experiencing unintended consequences for our customers. Now, by mid-2022, we were finally finding our groove with some of the migrations and beginning to look to the next phase of our platform and cost optimizations. Graviton presented the next frontier of those savings. We started out by migrating non-EKS AWS managed services such as managed streaming for Kafka, relational database service, and Elasticache for Redis. Now, what those migrations to Graviton helped us validate was the cost savings we were expecting to realize in other areas of our stack. So for the next phase of our Graviton rollout, we migrated our non-EKS standalone workloads that were had either not been migrated to EKS due to complexity, or they just weren't current candidates for due to product team timelines. So one of these complex tiers happened to be our most critical caching tier. So what we quickly learned with this tier was that in most regions and cases, we needed to use the largest network optimized Graviton instances available to us. So these instances were not necessarily the most popular instances due to their specialized nature. So because of that, Amazon didn't necessarily have a large fleet of those instance classes and types comparative to other more frequently used instance classes and types. And what we found is that in many of those regions, we started running out of available capacity during those scaling events. So during the first occurrence of this, of not being able to provision the additional instances, our team actually did a fantastic job of rolling back to our Intel-based images. And as an unexpected byproduct, we found ourselves actually being able to run hybrid platform clusters on both ARM and Intel architectures. Now, while there were minor performance differences and cost differences between the two architectures, there was no noticeable underlying impact to our customers. So in our regular sync-ups with the Spot team, we shared our practices of being able to manage both CPU architectures at the same time and go back and forth between the two with relative ease. Spot really liked this approach. They came to us with the idea of performing a beta to run multi-architecture platforms in Spot Ocean. So needless to say, that beta went very successful for both Telium and Spot. Spot Ocean allows you to run multiple images within virtual node groups, and Telium ourselves is running our Ocean clusters in a hybrid mode, increasing the breadth and Spot resources available to us to optimize both cost and performance.
Wow. So can you get into a little bit more detail about that? Were these architecture changes and decisions driven by cost or by efficiency or performance requirements? And how did the Spot products give you the flexibility in those decisions?
Yeah, okay. So there's two really good questions there that I think everyone should be asking here. But it really is a multifaceted answer. There's a lot that goes into refining a platform and being able to optimize costs at the same time. So Telium is really financially disciplined, and I think we do a really great job of it. So ultimately, I'm going to say that cost is the primary driver of what we do here. Ricky is going to cover more of the fine details. But for example, we have a weekly cost optimization meeting where we identify and track initiatives to optimize our spend. But there are other factors at play here, right? So there's another example here would be industry trends such as container orchestration, right? So the practice in and of itself that a lot of companies are doing it, whether it's driven by cost or not being the ultimate driver, but it's clear that the performance benefits you get on the whole from running an entire system are there along with the cost savings. So additionally, there are other performance initiatives that we have between SRE and devs that we work on together just to optimize the customer experience. But those improvements almost always come with the benefit of lower costs. I mean, if you have inefficiencies in your business logic of the product, you can oftentimes mask it with additional resources and spend, but you really want to ensure that those events are only short-term band-aids. But that being said, however, looking at all of those, I would have to say that cost is the ultimate driver here.
So thank you, Kevin. That was a really great technical overview of the architecture. Now let's move on to Ricky to talk about the money. Ricky, can you tell us a little bit about the financial impacts of all these changes and how that impacts your business?
Yeah, so as mentioned in some of the previous slides, cost optimization was certainly one of the driving factors into some of the architectural decisions that Caitlin just walked us through. And this is just a short list of initiatives because our team is continuously innovating. But as our teams are actually brainstorming optimization ideas, us FinOps folks are often asked the question of, will this project save us money? And if so, how much? And it's my responsibility to answer these questions early on so my engineering team can achieve a high return on their invested time. But in a cloud environment, it's really hard to answer that question when there's a lot of variables that determine the price of a resource. So at Telium, we try our best to normalize all units of measure. So for example, This chart here displays the results of 6 of the projects that Capen walked us through, but by the percentage of pricing for all EC2 normalized units. And the more blue on the chart is a good thing because spot delivers the highest discount rate in comparison to some of the other pricing options. Now, I know there are some exceptions like 3-year all up fronts, but these can become a huge cash burden depending on the liquidity of your firm. One thing that's often overlooked is that savings plan and RIs require a lot of cash invested today, so you can achieve a fixed percentage of savings in the future. And that savings rate is highly contingent on your engineering team not making instance type changes before the maturity date of that commit, or else you're going to end up in a double spending period. But at Telium, as we continued our journey with the EKS migration, expanding our availability pool, and began shifting instances to Graviton, we were able to realize an increase of 19 percentage points to our overall spot usage. When we started, we were at 36% in September of 2022, and by April of 2023, we were able to get to 55% of total usage running on spot pricing. And because we were able to design our components in a manner that can support running a large allocation on spot, this results in us being able to decrease the pool of RIs and savings plans required, and we can keep our on-demand close to zero. So what does this actually do to your cash outlay? Well, with spot pricing, you pay the discounted rate today for what you use and as you use it, which means we slow our cash burn and increase the utilization of every dollar that we spend. And this is not the end result because this does not include the latest dual AMI projects, which will soon be released to production. Now, we know spot delivers the highest discount rate, but spot pricing is variable with different probable outcomes on the pricing you can achieve. So how do we actually measure that? Well, the chart on the right here shows our cost per normalized unit, which I believe is the best form of measurement when looking at EC2 instance scaling. And I know cost per hour is often used, but the problem with vertical scaling is an instance is always measured in 24 hours regardless of its size. So let me give you an example. A 2XL instance size is 24 hours, and a 16XL instance size is also 24 hours. So you can imagine how this KPI can provide misleading results when trying to measure the financial results of your architectural changes. And at Telium, our optimization efforts resulted in a 20% price improvement in our overall cost per normalized unit. For our business, and probably many of yours, EC2 is more than 50% of our monthly bill, so a 20% improvement results in quite a bit of money and a direct positive impact to our gross margins. But achieving the 20% improvement was not a smooth process, and I think Capen can agree with me on this one. We realized early on that shifting our components to EKS would result in us losing visibility into our billing tag reporting, which is very important for proper cost allocation and financial reporting. So we explored several third-party solutions, but nothing quite fit our operating model, or they were just replicating solutions that we already solved in-house, or they were just way too expensive for what it was. So when I was trying to find a workaround, I learned that because we're a NetApp Spot Ocean product user, we are able to read granular data from their API, such as namespace and different labels, which is essentially the same thing as a billing tag. Then I can merge that with my AWS Curve report, in which I can then go update my automated dashboards, which allows me to solve this problem at zero cost. Now, another thing to prepare for is the double spending period during the cutover. During the migration process, we needed to keep old infrastructure running for a few days, just as a good practice and as a failsafe, until we can actually validate the performance of our operational changes. So we need to factor that double spending period into the budget, but it's hard to predict the future footprint of something running on EKS. Another finding was that Graviton nodes were not available in all regions, and the spot market was limited due to high demand. And so the rule of thumb is that when you're shifting to Graviton, you'll realize a 20% price improvement. Well, I've realized that that's only true if you're running on RIs or on demand, because spot pricing is quite variable, that you can actually fall below that benchmark pretty quickly. So we relied on the cost per normalized unit KPI to navigate us and measure the success of our decisions, which is what landed us to continue expanding our availability pool to keep achieving incremental savings.
Wow, that's no small chunk of change that you guys are saving while scaling in complexity. That's really impactful. Were there any other benefits that you realized from this?
So at Telium, we've built a cost-conscious operating model. So although our system performance will always be priority number one, we're always working towards margin improvement. And by operating in this manner, the projects that we discussed has allowed for some advantageous opportunity for us that were actually quite unexpected. So for example, this chart here is the correlation between our volume KPI called income and events, which is the orange line there. And then the blue line is our EC2 spend in our production environments. So what's interesting is that before November of 2022, there was really no pattern between the two metrics, which made it really difficult for me to forecast our spend due to month-over-month variances. And because of the success of our projects, we've unlocked the opportunity to improve our forecasting model by predicting spend in correspondence to how our system actually behaves. So in theory, a 1% increase in volume equates to a 1% increase in cost.
So how do you use this data and who sees it? And has it helped you make better business decisions?
So with this advantage, it unlocks a few other opportunities that I have here listed on the right. So I mentioned improving forecasting. So a project I recently worked on was to identify the operating margins by hosted region. And what we found was that some of the resources we use are actually cheaper in one region over another. And what this means is that if we're seeing a higher growth rate in a less cost-effective region, that means we'll begin to start realizing diminishing returns over time. So by understanding the direction of our usage and our product roadmap, we can be more strategic on where to build future resources. We're actively working on re-architecting our tagging policy to break apart a system so we can better understand it. And with a better understanding of how our system actually behaves, we can improve our system and contractual guardrails to protect our customers and us as a software provider. And as we're optimizing, we're reducing usage and we're reducing spend. So now we need to go back and right-size other contractual commits. And this is much more than just RIs. This is all other software that we use that is correlated to our cloud usage. And as an organization, we can use all of this knowledge to continue investing in building scalable and profitable products.
So as we near the conclusion of this webinar, what are 3 takeaways that you can impart to our audience that have really led to your success in operationalizing FinOps in such a demanding and dynamic environment?
Yeah, so these 3 categories here are the non-technical things that has allowed us to operate a successful FinOps practice at Telium, which you can actually go implement in your organization regardless of your technical background. So I mentioned that we're working on re-architecting our tagging policy. And the purpose behind this is to further improve the visibility of our product cost, but at different layers such as core product, sub-feature, and even usage type. And these layers will allow us to know if a new idea will ever turn a profit at scale or know the cost bottlenecks of a new or an existing feature. So working in FinOps, you'll quickly realize that not all departments speak the same language and not all KPIs are relevant. So for example, my finance department, they're interested in cash flow planning and management, growth rates across different areas of our spend. They want to understand the drivers of my forecast and for me to better explain the variance. FinOps, I'm responsible for delivering healthy gross margins. So my finance background comes into play here because I need to use my knowledge to control the velocity of money. So I'm focused on the payback period and the return on my upfront, the free load factor on my renewals, what is the carried risk on my existing commits, and what's the sensitivity of my spend so I can continuously deliver a reliable and trusted forecast. In engineering, they're focused on the operational metrics to ensure that we're always meeting our SLAs. So the common denominator for the 3 departments is a metric which we call CPM, cost per million events. And this indicates our cost per data volume processed by our system, which we can actually split up by data coming in and data going out. So this KPI helps us answer margin by customer and margin by hosted region, which can get us better aligned with the direction of revenue. And the last thing I'll add is the collaboration part. I run a weekly margin improvement meeting with engineering to discuss system improvement opportunities. I run a monthly margin review with my C-suite to discuss CapEx heavy projects and discuss any major forecast changes. And the most impactful is that at least one person from each core department is engaged in any new product design, development, and pricing. So by the time a new product goes to market, every department has their stamp of approval.
So thank you, Capin and Ricky, for sharing your Telium FinOps journey. I'm sure it's very helpful for everyone to hear about the collaboration between technical stakeholders and leaders in the business and how you all work together to achieve these FinOps outcomes. So with that, let's take some questions from the audience. What is your success rate on right sizing? And in your graph, you show a lot of percentages on spot instances, around 34 to 35%. Are these workloads development workloads that are meant to run on spot instances? So, Capen, I think that one's for you.
Yeah, so when it comes to right sizing, we don't really view it in terms of the success rate, but rather we take a continuous improvement methodology towards that. I'll touch on more of that in a minute, but let me talk about the high spot usage and what you're seeing across the board. And so we use spot instances ubiquitously across dev and production. One of the things you need to ensure up front is a very solid architecture design. It has very limited tight couplings and a few deliberate, but necessary persistence layers. So this allows other portions of the stack to be stateless and have the ability to be ephemeral in nature. So we're really comfortable running these tiers in spot because we're given shutdown messages that allow us to gracefully terminate before we lose those instances. And you're also seeing a high level of spot usage because we try to run as much as we possibly can through that. Additionally, Spot by NetApp allows you to leverage on-demand instances if spot instances are no longer available in the market. So we're backed by our savings plan to help lower costs in those events. So from there, it really boils down to the continual analysis I was discussing in terms of, we identify potential waste from our cost optimization meeting. And from there, we identify a tier that we think we can run leaner. And we then start with one region in our environment. We roll to a more effective instance type, and then we observe that behavior. And then from there, we either continue or we roll back. So that process is typically done same day, but sometimes depending on the nature of it, could be 2 to 3 days, depending on what's going on there. So lastly, we follow all that up a number of days later and analyzing both the performance and the cost savings to see if there's any additional adjustments to be made. And that's the approach we take.
So thank you very much. So now the next question is, how do you get the normalized cost per unit?
So on AWS, an EC2 instance has an instance size footprint that is measured by what's called the normalization factor. And this data point is available in the curve, which you would just take the sum of those units and divide by the runtime cost of those EC2 instances. If the curve report is not available to you, then the factor table starts at 0.25 for a nano instance size and doubles for every incremental size. So for example, if a size small instance type is equal to 1, then the medium is double that, so 2, a large is 4, and an XL is 16. So you can do a simple query to do that conversion. And if you still have some issues trying to solve that, feel free to reach out to me and I can better explain that offline.
Thank you, Ricky. And the next question is this the same way size flexible RIs are calculated?
That's correct. Yes. So instance size flexibility, this is RIs that are applied to usage for instances that have the same family type and generation. And with this approach, it's actually very powerful for RDS, for example, because the RIs there have vertical coverage. So by breaking these commits down to the smallest normalized unit, you can achieve both higher coverage and higher utilization.
Thank you for that one. And then I think another question here. On your pricing option chart 1, I see savings plans went from 19% and increased to 23% by April. Did you increase your savings plans usage to achieve the 19% savings?
So that's a great catch. We did not increase our savings plan commit within the time frame that was being shown. We're actually running on a large 3-year as a fixed base layer, so that doesn't really go up or down. So the beginning of this journey, our savings plan was 19% of the usage at that time. And by April, our usage was much lower from the projects that we discussed. So the savings plan base layer doesn't change, which is why as a percentage of the total, the savings plan went up.
So those are all the questions submitted so far. If anyone has any additional questions or would like to learn more about Spot by NetApp solutions for FinOps, please feel free to reach out to us by email or through our website, www.spot.io. Thank you so much, Ricky and Capen, for such an interesting and insightful description of your FinOps journey. And thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. This concludes today's webinar, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.